Caught in a trap of your own making. That's what this one's called. So in my experience in life, you don't tend to get away with anything. If you do something wrong, you might get away with it in the short run, but in the long run, your actions will catch up with you, and bad things will happen. So there's two ways of looking at it, isn't there? There's the Buddhist karma. I think they're quite big on that. But I guess also there's the old version of Christianity, the true sort of Christianity that, you know, the God-fearing variety, and particularly in Victorian times, that encouraged people, rich people, you know, to do all sorts of fantastic things with their money, you know, like building hospitals and schools and all of that. We're now living in a different age, the age of deception and spin. I remember the last head teacher that I worked with, she was always going on about devious plans, you know, and whenever she used to say this, my heart would just sink, because I just knew it to be wrong. You know, you must, being devious, even if you're just joking about it, it's not good. It's not good, and it's going to come back and haunt you in the long run. It's not a wise strategy. Other things that I noticed whilst I was working at this school, there was a lot of very rich parents, and you would have thought, wouldn't you, that these people would be really happy. You know, they had loads of money, loads of status. But I remember sitting in GCSE and A-level certificate evenings, and this Happy Monday song used to come into my head, which, you know, was about it was a 24-hour party, people, and there was a line in it: plastic face, can't smile, wipe out. And I just used to think, that's like this, you know, they've got everything, you know, they've got daughters attending at a really expensive private school, you know, somehow they've got these impressive exam results. It's a Friday night, and you would have thought that they would have been happy, wouldn't you? A few smiles would be on their faces, but no, no smiles at all. So 2 years ago, the powers that be, our so-called leaders, governments, they set a massive trap for us, didn't they? They tried to deceive us into accepting something into our bodies. And many of us, we didn't fall for that trap. We weren't deceived by the trap that was set for us. We didn't blindly walk into it. So we're now approaching this kind of, what's the phase? The reckoning phase of the last 2 years, and you know, we've got a bit of distraction going on at the moment with Ukraine, and who knows, but a reckoning is going to take place. And the point of this video really is that I don't think we have to do anything to take revenge against the people that tried to trick us, and the reason for that is just natural law, that the big man upstairs, God, he will punish these people, and we shouldn't try to mess really with what God's got planned. These people will be punished, 100% guaranteed. And if we do try to intervene, then we're likely to kind of mess up what God's got actually planned for these people. So I've got a story about that. It's an old one from about 3,000 years ago. And it's one of the characters in this story is this king, right? And he's a bit of a stupid party animal, you know, so he drinks a lot, and he likes women, and he gets things a little bit out of control at times. And this guy, he asked his wife, who was quite an attractive lady, to do something a bit lewd in front of his mates. And his queen, this Vashni, she basically says, "Nah, I ain't doing that," which puts this king's nose out of joint. So he tries to then find a replacement queen, you know, because he's kind of a bit worried about losing face. So he goes out and he instructs people to kind of find suitable candidates, and one of them is this young girl called Esther, who's apparently a bit of a looker and a really nice person as well. So she gets taken, I think more or less against her will, into the king's palace, where she's sort of going to be up against some other captured beauties from other parts of the kingdom. And it's going to be a bit like, there was no TV obviously, but a bit like reality TV, in that he's going to pick the one that he likes best to be the new king, the new queen. So surprise, surprise, this Esther, she wins the competition and she becomes the king's new queen. And she also has an uncle, this Esther, right? She's an orphan, but she has an uncle, and he's called Mordecai. So Mordecai joins Esther in the same city where she's living with this king. And a few years go by, and Mordecai finds out by chance that the king's got some enemies in his court and they're plotting to kill him. So Mordecai talks to Esther, his niece, and tells him what's happening. Esther tells the king, plot's uncovered, the people plotting against him are executed. So happy days. The thing is that Mordecai doesn't really get praised, because the king is such an alcoholic and party animal. He gets drunk and he kind of he forgets all about it, that this event, this terrible event, actually happened, and this Mordecai helped him. Now things bubble along quite nicely for a while, and the king appoints this guy called Hanan. And this guy's not a nice piece of work. He's probably demonically possessed, you know, he's into power and status. And he kind of tricks the king into making him like head honcho. He's his main gopher, so he's got a lot of power. And he doesn't like Jews. So he manages to convince the king that he would be a lot better off if he killed all the Jews and he nicked all of their stuff. You know, he could solve all the king's money problems at one go if he just lets this guy, this Hanan guy, pass an order that all Jews are going to be murdered. Now, what's interesting about this is that the king doesn't know that his wife's a Jew, and neither does this Hanan guy. Anyway, the story kind of moves forward a little bit, and this Hanan guy, he's out and about in town, and he comes across Mordecai, and he's passed this order like that everyone's got to kneel down whenever they see this Hanan guy, you know, because he's into his power and his status. And this Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, the Jew, he basically refuses to take the knee. He refuses to take the knee to Hanan. And this obviously makes Hanan go absolutely mental. He just loses his mind. So he goes back home and he's talking with his daughter and that, and he's like, what am I going to do? So he decides on building a 30 metre tall spike. And back in those days, 3,000 years ago, they called it a gallows, but it wasn't. It was a place where you killed people. But back in those days, it wasn't like hanging. It was you were impaled on a massive spike. It went up your backside and came out somewhere near your neck, and it was a very, very nasty way of dying. So this Hanan says, right, I'm going to build a 30 metre high stake, and I'm going to put that Mordecai on it, you know, because he's disrespected me, you know. He isn't willing to take the knee to me when I'm in his vicinity. So at this stage in proceedings, things are looking bad. First bad thing is that this Hanan has passed an order that all Jews are going to be murdered. And then the second thing is that this Hanan guy has got a 30 metre spike ready for Mordecai. So things are looking pretty bleak. So fortunately, things now seem to start turning in favour of Esther and Mordecai. And this is God's hand at work. So one night the king, it all starts off, the king he can't get to sleep, so he calls on the servants, go and get me the journals, and the journals are normally dead boring. Anyway, by chance his servants select the journal that relates to how Mordecai uncovered the plot to kill him. So the king's like, how did I forget about this? Oh, it must have been a bit of a heavy partying session for me to have forgotten to reward this Mordecai. So he thinks to himself, right, what I need to do is I need to contact this Hanan guy and tomorrow and get him to organise some sort of recognition, you know, for this guy, this Mordecai, who kind of saved me. So he sends out an order to Hanan, and Hanan receives it, and he's like thinking it's going to be about him, you know. Oh, he's done well for the king, and the king's gonna, you know, sort him out with all sorts of fancy stuff. So he turns up at the palace thinking, you know, the king asks him, like, you know, if you were to reward somebody, what sort of stuff would you want? And this Hanan guy thinks it's all about him. So he's like, I'd have a new horse, I'd have new finest clothes, all the bling that one would have wanted from 3,000 years ago. So Hanan's, you know, suggesting all of this stuff, thinking it's going to come his way. So anyway, this Hanan's, he's listening to it all, you know, fantastic. So, and then the king drops the bombshell, and he mentions Mordecai, and Hanan, he like thinks, oh, you know, this ain't good. This is the guy who refused to bow down before me and take the knee. He's the guy that I'm building the 30-meter stake for. So he starts, for the first time, the tables are beginning to turn. Maybe this might be analogous to, you know, the look of fear that you can sometimes see on the face of Ardern or Trudeau or Chris Whitty, or, you know, like, I could be in trouble here. You know, I set this trap, you know, and it's not quite working out in the way. My devious plan ain't going to work out, or it doesn't look as if it's going to work out in the way that I envisaged it. So then, you know, there's another irony here. So just as he's about to leave the king's presence, you know, the king says to this Hanan guy, I want you to sort it all out. So get in contact with Mordecai, organise a guard of honour. He had to parade him all the way around the city, sort out his new clothes, his new horse. So you can imagine for Hanan, who was consumed with hate, that this was, you know, this was pretty tough, a tough pill for him to have to swallow, you know, to treat his sworn enemy Mordecai to all of these fantastic luxuries that he thought were going to go to him. But there's still the other problem, isn't there? The order that this Hanan's got out to kill all the Jews. So like, Esther's a Jew, and she hasn't told the king that she's a Jew yet. So, you know, one way for her to deal with this would be to just keep mum about it and just watch all the fellow Jews get slaughtered. But she's a good person, so she decides to be brave and stand up for what's right. You know, like what a lot of us have done over the last 2 years. She wasn't cowardly. She took the option that was brave but right. So she decides to invite the king and this Hanan to a banquet, and that's quite a risky thing for her to do, because this king summons her. So for her to do the opposite and ask the king, it's kind of a bit presumptuous, and apparently, you know, it's enough for her to be executed if the king views it in the wrong way. Anyway, she's got a bit of guts about her, so she invites the king over. And so this is a scene at the banquet, yeah? So there's Esther, and she's invited the king, who's accepted her invitation. All worked out okay. And the king's like, you know, he kind of admires her courage, and he's like saying to her, look, whatever you ask, you know, even up to half my kingdom, I'll give it to you. And this Hanan guy is also there as well. So Esther starts off by telling the king that Hanan has built a 30-meter stake to impale Mordecai on. Now, at this point, the king goes absolutely mental, because he now knows that it was Mordecai that basically saved the king in the past from the assassination attempt. So the king orders Hanan to be impaled on the very same stake that he'd planned to impale Mordecai on. Yeah, so Hanan had built the trap. He had his devious plan. He thought he'd trapped and snared and had done with Mordecai, but no, the very, very same trap was going to be used against him. It was going to be him that was going to die on the stake, not Mordecai. And then the second thing that Esther did was that she told him that she was a Jew, and that Hanan had passed this order that to murder all the Jews and steal all their stuff. So the king basically he says, okay, well look, the order's given now, but what I'm also going to do is to grant an order that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves against anyone who attacks them. So, upshot of the story is that Hanan gets executed on the 30-meter spike, this what they call the gallows, and then also his sons, Hanan's sons, also die at the hands of the Jews who he had planned to murder. So, yeah, this is, I guess, a story about you don't need to take revenge. God will do that. God's wrath. You know, people that wish ill on others, what tends to happen is that rather than the ill falling on others, it falls on the person that was wishing them ill. You know, you dig a trap for somebody, and more often than not, it's you that end up in the trap rather than the person that you hope to trick. And this is likely, I think this is likely to happen with the Divot, you know, the people that wanted to trick people. What's actually happened is that the trap that they set basically involved them unmasking themselves to the general public. And these people, I think they're quite right to be afraid. You know, when Hanan found out that the king knew that it was Mordecai that saved him, you know, Hanan knew the jig was up, and I think that that's the case now for the likes of Trudeau, Bill Gates. They know the game is already up, and God's wrath is about to turn on them. So, in conclusion, then, first conclusion really is patience. We don't just be patient. People will get their just desserts. It might take a little bit of time though. And we just need to let God's plans for these people unfold. And we certainly don't need to take vengeance. That's not our place really. Other people, God will do that for us. And then there's this quote from Romans chapter 12 verse 19. So it goes like this: "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." And with that, that's the end. That's all I want to say. God bless.